Dad died miserably after the leech woman squeezed my father dry and turned him into bones. I was very happy and helped the leech woman seduce and kill other men in the village. Just because the leech woman is beautiful, fair-skinned, and has saved my life. The flash flood broke through my door, and women with fair and smooth skin came in, but her legs were soft and she could only crawl and couldn't stand up straight. I looked at this woman. She was thin, about 150 centimeters tall, and had 3 to 5 stretch marks on her abdomen, indicating that she had been pregnant. My mother greeted me, and together we lifted the unconscious woman onto the table. Her skin was cold, like ice, but her body was particularly soft, as if there were no bones in her skin. I was scared in my heart. Could it be drowned by the flood? I quietly checked the woman's breath. Fortunately, she was alive. My mother sighed and said to me, "Yeah, I'll go get her 2 pieces of clothing to cover her body." As soon as my mother walked into the bedroom, a rough roar immediately came, disturbing my sleep. "Do you want to die? This is my father." Before, every time my dad made out with Widow Wong, I would give him some money as a gesture. But he hasn't gone to the city to make money recently. The night before last, we went to have a free meal. Widow Wong got old and shouted to the villagers, saying that my father bullied a widow. The villagers mocked my father and lost face. He is a typical troublemaker, shouting at my mother, "If you don't leave now, I'll kill you." At this time, the beautiful woman lying on the table had already woken up, curled up and looked around. Her eyes were dark and bright, like a child. My voice became much softer unconsciously. "This is Wangjia village. Are you not from our village?" The woman bit her lip, her eyes full of confusion. My mother took off her coat and shone it on the woman's naked back, saying in a hurry, "Miss, leave quickly. Driving a woman away is also for her own good. My father is a beast. He spent all the money he earned in his life on Widow Wong. If my father saw such a beautiful woman at home, he would definitely tie her up and make trouble for her." But the woman just wouldn't leave and kept twisting her body, exposing most of her fair and tender shoulders. My mom frowned and muttered, "Is this woman crazy?" My dad walked out of the room and asked, "When did a beautiful woman come to our house?" He had a smile on his face, staring at the woman's naked body. "Yukui, you said she was sick, right? I can cure him obediently in bed." My dad hugged the woman and buried his head in front of her, which smelled so good and comfortable. "My mom is anxious. You are an animal." She quickly grabbed my dad's arm. This girl was just temporarily drowned, and her brain was not really sick. "You are mistreating her like this. When she wakes up, she will not seek death." My dad pushed my mom away fiercely and roared, "I've been feeling uncomfortable all over these days. Don't force me to kill you." My mother, who has always been weak, has an extremely firm attitude. "Wang Jiafa, you can't even touch this girl with a finger." My mother is the first high school student in the village, and could have left the village and had a bright and brilliant life. But that year the village was also red. The beam of my mother's house collapsed, directly killing her parents. My mother came back from the city to keep watch over his parents. My father had a lustful heart and forced my mother. No matter how much she resisted, no one paid attention to her. The people in the village not only did not allow my mother to go to school, but also half persuaded and half forced her to marry my father. My father directly broke one of my mother's legs, and my mother completely gave up and was with my father. Now my dad is using the same trick again, targeting this fair and tender girl. My mom is going crazy to stop him. Wang Jiafa, you have already harmed me, and I will never let you harm anyone else again. My dad thinks my mom is boring, so he slapped her in the face. I'll beat you up. My mother's face was swollen and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. My mother hugged my father's leg and kept shouting at the woman to leave quickly. The beautiful woman had been lying still on the table before, but this time she moved. I thought she would run away quickly, but I never expected that she would bow her body, lift her slender arms, and grab my father's clothes. My dad sat down on the table and touched the woman with a smile. She moved her soft body and crawled into my father's arms. My mother widened her eyes and questioned the girl. "What are you doing?" The woman glanced at my mother sideways, provocatively took off her half-wrapped coat, and wrapped her slender and smooth hands around my father's waist. Her eyebrows and eyes were slightly raised, and her pink lips were half open, extremely tempting. My dad smiled happily, hugged the woman's face, and kissed her. My mother stomped her feet in anger and shook her head. "Girl, you are a married person. How will you face your husband and children later?" My dad picked up the woman and saw several brown stretch marks on her lower abdomen. Such tender flowers had been stepped on by other men. A smirk appeared on my dad's lips. Heh, women who have given birth also have the benefits of having children. Soon, an unbearable sound came from the room, and this woman was beautiful, which fascinated my father. My dad spends all his time in bed with women except for eating, drinking, and going to the bathroom. That day, my dad went to the bathroom, and I sneaked into the bedroom. The woman was lying on the bed, naked, tired, and very satisfied. I kneeled down in front of her. "I beg you, please don't stay in my house. The flood has receded. The men with some ability in the village have all gone to the city to make money. But my father is intimate with women every day, and my family is so poor that we are about to run out of food." The woman smiled at me and asked why I should leave. Then she closed her eyes and stretched lazily. Her waist was really long, like a spring, constantly stretching and stretching. My pupils suddenly widened, and I realized that the woman had become taller and rounder. Originally, the woman was only about 150 centimeters tall, but now she is 178 centimeters tall. The woman bent over, twisted her waist, and rolled over on the bed. "I can't live without your father." Her rosy lips slightly parted, and she looked at me with a charming smile. "Your father's taste made me unable to help myself. My mother kindly saved her and helped her dress, but she didn't know how to repay her kindness and even seduced my father. A nameless fire grew in my heart, and I suddenly walked towards the woman, grabbed her arm, and pulled her under the bed. "Get out of my house. This is the second time I have touched her. Her skin is as white and smooth as ever." I tugged hard on her wrist, but I was shocked to find that there were no bones in her wrist. The woman was dragged off the bed by me. She didn't stand up, crawled on the ground, and looked at me with resentment. You made me feel so painful." My dad walked in, instantly furious, and shouted at me, "How dare you touch my woman?" As soon as the words fell, my dad's fist had already smashed into my face. Usually, this punch would definitely make me bruised and swollen. But when the fist landed on my face, I didn't feel too much pain. My dad yelled at me again, "Get out." In just a few days, my dad was swollen all over, with dense bumps on his face, which looked particularly terrifying. He should have dark circles all over his face when he was intimate with a woman. Why does his face have bulging pimples? My dad is also obsessed with lust and bends over to hug the woman on the ground. The woman entered my father's arms, but this time my father was too weak to pick her up. The woman was half lying on my father's body. She had feet, but couldn't exert any strength. She looked like a long plastic bag filled with water and couldn't stand steadily. Suddenly, I had a terrifying guess in my heart. Could she not have no bones in her body? Can a person without bones still be considered human? At this time, my mother came back from working in the field and looked at my son in surprise. "What happened to your hand?" I saw that my palm was full of sticky, wet, transparent mucus, and the mucus was extremely sticky, so sticky that my fingers couldn't open. My mom asked what you touched. "Why don't you go wash up?" "I just touched the woman who rushed in the flood. She made my hands sticky." The image of a woman began to appear in my mind. She suddenly stretched her white and soft body by 20 to 30 centimeters, had boneless wrists and stable feet, and secreted mucus from her body. She didn't look like a human, but more like a vampire ant wearing human skin. I looked up at my mother. "Do you believe in the legend of the leech woman? Our village is located in a depression deep in the mountains. The village is poor and often floods. Every time the flood recedes, a large number of leeches will come up. Leeches are blood-sucking insects with high medicinal value. Villagers will catch leeches and dry them to sell in the city. In legend, the appearance of these grasshoppers was not a gift from heaven, but a deal reached between our village's ancestors and the grasshopper woman who had become a spirit. The locust woman gave the villagers locusts that could be exchanged for money. Her request was that the villagers of Wangjia village would worship her for generations. This offering is not incense, but requires all the dead in our village to be buried in water, decomposed and decayed naturally in the lake full of microorganisms outside the village, in addition to eating the villagers' water burial offerings. The leech woman will appear in the village every 500 years as a shy and beautiful woman. My mother's face was a bit embarrassed. She pointed to the room where the unbearable sound came from and lowered her voice, saying, "Do you mean that's the leech woman?" I nodded and smelled my slimy palm again, and a fishy smell of blood hit my nose. My mother also leaned forward and grabbed my hand to smell it. Her face became even more embarrassed. "The locust woman must have been clinging to your father, which is probably not a good thing. The locust woman comes to the village every 500 years, but no one knows what she wants to do." A satisfied, muffled cry came from the room, and I rushed in. I saw my dad lying in bed with his eyes closed and a smile on his face. I saw a big pimple on his eyelid, and the black pimple would sometimes bulge and sometimes flatten, just like a small bug crawling under my dad's eyelid. The intimacy with the leech woman day and night made my father's body weak and weak. He shouted that he wanted to kill the only valuable cow in the house and eat cow whips to nourish his body. Widow Wong ran to my doorstep at some point. "Are you going to kill the cow now?" She just looked at my dad and said with a smile, "Your cow is worth a lot of money. You will have to be intimate with me when the time comes." My father has always been a loyal customer of Widow Wong. In recent days, she has had a grasshopper woman and has never looked for Widow Wong again. So Widow Wong came to inquire anxiously. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that you didn't give me intimate money. This time I will give you a discounted price as a regular customer." In the past, my dad couldn't wait to taste the taste of Widow Wong, but this time my dad was full of disgust, and he pushed Widow Wong hard. "You fat woman, you smell bad. Get out of here quickly." Wong Widow was pushed hard to the ground, staring at my father in disbelief. "How dare you push me? You forgot what you said before. You are willing to die on me." My dad grabbed the broom next to him and wanted to hit him. "If you don't leave now, I'll kill you." Widow Wong is in the flesh trade and doesn't do any work. She is more beautiful than most women in the village. She couldn't accept my dad treating her like this. She sat on the ground and howled, "You heartless person. I used to give others 50 yuan, but I only charge you 48 yuan. How could you treat me like this?" He howled like this, attracting the attention of the surrounding villagers. The villagers stood at my doorstep one after another, speaking up for Widow Wong. "Last time you didn't pay, it was your fault. Widow Wong is the most lively woman in the village. How could you tell him to leave just because he was pretty?" Wong Lazy, the neighbor next door, glared at my father and said, "Don't be unaware of your blessings. I asked Widow Wong to give me a discount of 2 yuan, but he refused." Widow Wong is the favorite of the men in the village, and the men around her are all coaxing her. Her tone also became proud. "You don't want the meat sent to the door by the Wong family. Remember it. When you miss me, I won't be at this price." My dad rolled his eyes almost to the sky. He has tasted the best in the world and still cares about you, a stinky woman. Wong Lazy laughed heartily, and besides Wong Widow, who else in the village dared to be a top-notch? And everyone else laughed along. "Wong Jiafa, did you start to like your wife, a lame woman, after being laughed at by everyone last time?" My father was impatient and strode into the room, dragging out the grasshopper woman. The grasshopper woman crawled on the ground with fair and slender limbs and skin as tender as tofu, entering everyone's sight without any obstruction, and that long black hair, half covered, blocked her body, making her even more beautiful, making people want to hug her and fiercely toss her. The grasshopper woman's eyes were slightly red, biting her lips and saying softly, "Can you not doth us?" All the men present held their breath and did not speak. Wong Lazy stared straight at the snow-white skin of the grasshopper woman and exclaimed, "Oh my God, there are still such beautiful women in this world." He had a smile on his face and rushed towards the grasshopper woman regardless of everything. With Wong Lazy taking the lead, the men around couldn't resist and rushed towards the grasshopper woman like wolves and tigers. My dad roared angrily, grabbing Wong Lazy's shoulder. "Don't touch her, the woman is mine." But these men have lost their rationality. They look, act crazy, and compete one after another, lying on the white and smooth body of the grasshopper woman. A carnival is about to begin, and the leech woman lies on the ground, stretching her body with a slight smile on her lips. Charming. My mother quickly took my hand and ran out of the house, and the carnival lasted for a whole day. Night falls, and the men are tired, but they are still fighting for the locust woman. My dad rushed to the kitchen, took out a knife, and sliced Wong Lazy directly. Accompanied by a sharp scream of pain, Wong Lazy sprayed a large amount of blood on his shoulder. The newly sprayed blood was usually red, but Wong Lazy's blood was black. I looked closely at Wong Lazy's blood, which was densely packed with black spots like tadpoles. The wound skin and flesh turned outward on both sides, but what was exposed was not blood-red flesh, but dark and rich black spots. I suddenly thought of the scene where I used to plant rice in the field, and the locust crawled into my crotch. Grasshoppers had the ability to numb human pain, and can crawl into human skin and flesh when people are not paying attention, suck human blood, and reproduce and lay eggs inside. Did the grasshopper woman parasitize her grasshopper descendants to Wong Lazy? All the other men who have touched the grasshopper woman look no different from ordinary people, but their skin is covered with fine bumps. The black bumps on my dad's skin are even more dense, and you can even see signs of something wriggling in his bumps. My dad brandished a kitchen knife and yelled, "This is my woman. If you touch my woman again, I'll kill you." These men finally let go of the locust woman, and they all left one after another, leaving only a smell in the room. My dad chuckled and said, "You can only be mine. I want to be intimate with you again." Suddenly, a black pus lump on his face broke, and a thin and long black grasshopper fell out. My dad's eyes were full of leeches he didn't notice, and he laughed weakly, and "I want to taste your flavor." At this time, if a black grasshopper falls from my father's face, my father hooks his head and stretches his neck to stare at the grasshopper. "What is this? How could there be a grasshopper on my face?" My father's voice was full of fear, but before he could finish speaking, a clattering sound came, and densely packed black long locusts fell off his face like a tie. My dad screamed in fear, leaned forward, and fell to the ground, only to hear a muffled sound, and his head separated from his neck. Countless thin and soft grasshopper larvae, wriggling their pitch-black bodies, crawled out crazily from my father's mouth, nose, eyes, neck, and even skin pores. My father died. He had been parasitized and multiplied by locusts, and his body was crowded with dense locusts. Once these larvae grow up, they will leave my father's body. I thought of a story that an old man in the village told me. A long time ago, a village woman was thirsty while working and ran to the stream to drink water. As a result, she accidentally drank a leech. Soon after, she felt itchy and had to wash her hair every day. In rural areas, washing hair requires boiling water, which is very expensive. The woman's husband was very angry and couldn't help but slap her. As a result, the woman's head was slapped off, revealing densely packed black locust wriggling. Now my father's situation is exactly the same as the woman in the story. My father died miserably, but in just over 10 minutes. His skin was completely destroyed, leaving only a twisted white bone. A voice came, "Your Wangjia village is about to be slaughtered," and the leech woman remained motionless. My father turned into a skeleton, and when my mother saw this skeleton, a look of fear appeared on her face, and she incredulously asked, "Where is your father?" I pointed to the bones, and my mother, with red eyes, looked fiercely and angrily at the grasshopper woman lying beside me. "Did you kill my husband?" The grasshopper woman didn't speak. She kept twisting, secreting a lot of transparent mucus from her body, and the mucus was extremely smelly. My mother rushed to the front of the leech woman and pinched her neck hard. I want to separate my mother because this leech woman is too scary. She can parasitize the descendants of leeches into human bodies. I don't want my mother to be parasitized too. Actually, I am a little grateful to the leech woman in my heart. I am grateful that he killed my father. My father is proficient in eating, drinking, and gambling. He beats and scolds me and my mother at home. His death is a relief for me and my mother. My mother wailed, "Although my father is a scoundrel, at least he is here. The men in the village dare not bully us. Now that he is dead, our difficult days have really come." My mother thought more and more angry and wanted to slap the leech woman. Then the rough voice suddenly sounded, "Wong family has a big, beautiful woman." A tall and strong man with a full face came over. His name was Wong Bok Kong, a famous bully in the village. When he saw the leech woman, Wong Bok Kong stared straight at her. "Oh my God, there really is a beautiful woman." In his eyes there was only a white and tender grasshopper woman, completely ignoring the bones on the ground and the groups of grasshopper larvae wriggling beside him. The laughter crawled all over Wong Bok Yang's face. "Ha ha ha, such a fresh and beautiful woman. I must taste it well." He walked in and picked up the grasshopper woman and threw her on the table, and began the pleasure of fish and water. A burst of unbearable sound came. "Why didn't you make a sound?" Wong Bok Kong was stunned. Could it be dead? The grasshopper woman closed her eyes and remained motionless. The turtle hugged the grasshopper woman's body, full of regret and regret. "She died like this, and I haven't tasted enough yet." I was very shocked. Did she die because she couldn't bear the mistreatment? She was a grasshopper woman, a monster that the grasshopper cultivated into human form. How did she die like this? I couldn't believe my eyes, and I held back my fear and poked my hand at the tip of the leech woman's nose. She lay on the table, her body stiff, without any breath. She was really dead. But even if she died, she was still very beautiful. Her skin was as white as porcelain. I couldn't help but touch her skin, and with a crisp sound, the skin of the leech woman cracked open, revealing a softer and whiter skin. The speed of skin cracking was very slow, like a spider web, slowly spreading around. Wong Bok Yang's face showed a smile again, and he wanted to do something unbearable. A low and heavy sigh came from outside the door. Grasshoppers once shed their skin once every 100 years, and then wanted to slaughter a village. I looked up and saw a man wearing a blue-gray doused robe. "Your Wangjia village is about to be slaughtered." Wong Bok Kong rebelled. "Where did the stinky douse come from? Don't disturb here." He stood up and threw me and my mother out of the room. He glanced at me with a hint of surprise in his eyes. "I didn't expect you, this little boy, to resist the temptation of the locust whale without any filth." I asked him, "You said the leech woman would slaughter the village. She is already dead now. I just tested her. She has no breath." The Taoist shook his head. The grasshopper spirit was already a monster. How could he use the method of testing human life and death to test him? The vitality of grasshoppers is extremely tenacious. Even if they are cut in half, they can still survive. I couldn't help but ask, "Then why is she motionless now?" The Taoist said that he sheds his skin again, and every time he sheds his skin, his appearance will become more beautiful, and the brown marks on his waist and abdomen will also decrease by 1. When the marks on her waist and abdomen are completely gone, I'm afraid the world will be in chaos. I frowned, feeling that this was a bit alarmist. He kept saying that the locust woman wanted to harm people and slaughter the village. But the locust woman harmed those men who were obsessed with her and crazily abused her. And the locust woman never hurt me or my mother. The Taoist in front of me seemed to have guessed my thoughts, snorted coldly. "The grasshopper spirit won't harm you. It's just that the time hasn't come yet." Just now I saw a sentence in the room. "That white bone is your father's, right? Your father was deeply tempted by the grasshopper woman, poisoned the most, and died the fastest. Every time the grasshopper woman kills someone, her appearance becomes more beautiful." The Taoist stared at me and said word by word, "Child, can you guarantee that you can resist the temptation of beauty? Men are naturally lustful, which cannot be changed. But I know that the leech woman cannot harm my mother." I couldn't help but retort that the leech woman would use her beautiful appearance to kill men. "I believe you for now, but she can't harm my mother. My mother is a woman, and women are not interested in women." The Taoist laughed heartily. "You only know one thing, but not the other. The grasshopper spirit is different from other spirits. It can be hermaphrodite. After the grasshopper spirit parasitizes and kills all the men in the village, its body will gradually secrete hormones and become a handsome and extraordinary man. The women in the village can't help but feel uncontrollable when they see the grasshopper spirit transform into a man. I'm not afraid of death, just afraid of my mother." So I hurriedly took my mother's hand and said, "Mom, let's leave this village." "Can't leave." My mother sighed. "Daozu, you may not know, our ancestors made a deal with the locust woman. Minors are absolutely not allowed to leave the village. Otherwise they will die. Although adults can leave the village, they must return to the village every 3 months. Otherwise they will also die. You really can't leave." The Taoist priest next to you said that there are parasitic eggs of locusts in the water you often drink. Once you leave the village after a long time, the parasitic eggs cannot get the nourishment and comfort of the water in the village, and they will crazily gnaw on the host's body, and the host will die. I widened my eyes in fear. What should I do? The Taoist immediately said that the only way to survive was to kill the grasshopper spirit, kill the grasshopper woman. She's a monster, and her vitality is very tenacious. How can she be killed? The Taoist took out a yellow ceramic bottle from his body and put it in my hand. Most locusts are afraid of salt, and locust spirits are no exception. This bottle contains secret salt. Now, while the leech spirit is molting and unable to move, quickly pour this salt into her mouth so that the leech spirit can no longer harm people. The Taoist patted my shoulder again. "Child, Now the lives of the whole village are in your hands. The lives of the whole village are in my hands. I rushed into the house with a surge of blood and wanted to kill the locust woman, but turning his head to look at the doused, why didn't he deal with the leech woman himself, but instead asked me, a child, to go? The doused said without hesitation, I have the true young energy of the celestial master, and I cannot get too close to the grasshopper's spirit, otherwise it will arouse her vigilance. But you are just a child, and she has no defense against you. I pushed open the door of the room, and Wang Bakong fell to the ground, his face pale, staring straight at his stomach. His stomach was filled with densely packed grasshoppers. Wang Bakong let out a painful scream, but he could no longer speak. His mouth was constantly gushing with locusts, and the locust woman lying on the table had opened her eyes. Her eyes were really beautiful, pitch black, but shiny like the brightest stars in the sky. The grasshopper woman looked at me motionlessly, but I dared not look. She was really becoming more and more beautiful. I was afraid of doing something wrong, so I closed my eyes and rushed to the grasshopper woman's side, pouring all the bottle powder in my hand into her mouth. The leech woman screamed in pain, and I quickly ran out, holding an empty bottle and telling the doused that she had already drunk salt ash. The doused was very cautious. He stood outside the door and looked for a while, then a smile appeared on his face, and he drew a sword towards the grasshopper essence. I'm in a hurry. She's dying. Why did you still stab her? What do you know? Grasshoppers are excellent medicinal materials, and grasshopper essence is an excellent prescription to help me practice. The doused looked excited, his voice distorted. As long as I eat the leech meat, my cultivation can reach a higher level. That's right. I lowered my head. He's probably going to be disappointed. The doused sword didn't cut the grasshopper woman. Although the grasshopper woman was still shedding her skin, she reacted quickly and jumped up quickly. At the same time, a piercing vibration came from his abdomen, and in the next moment, countless densely packed locusts rushed out of the cracks in the wall and crazily crawled towards the doused. What's going on? How can you still move? The doused saw a large area of dense black locusts, and his face changed. He lifted his foot to rush out of the room, but in just a moment, the whole room was already filled with locusts. The doused kept slashing the leeches with his sword and glared at me fiercely. It was your doing. You didn't feed him salt ash. I innocently shook my head. I was just too scared, so I closed my eyes and poured salt ash on the locust woman, so I don't know if it went into her mouth. The doused was angry and afraid, but he didn't have time to hurt me, because a leech had already climbed onto his feet. 5 minutes passed, and the doused body was crawled with leeches. Another 5 minutes passed, and he became a mummy skeleton. The leech girl lay on the table, looking at me with a half-smile. Why did she help me? Why did I help her? Did I help her? I was just helping myself. I said I was grateful that she killed my father. People in our village have always bullied the weak and bullied men and women. After my father's death, unless my mother goes into business, like Widow Wong, my mother and I will spend our lives in the humiliation of men. I hate the people in the village, so why should I listen to the doused and hurt the locust woman to save the whole village? The leech woman hooked her finger at me and called me over. She is so beautiful, I obediently walked over, and the leech woman suddenly opened her mouth, revealing a crimson tongue. I screamed in fright, thinking she was going to eat me, but I didn't expect a drop of blood from her tongue to fall into my mouth. The leech woman waved her hand at me and said, "Get lost." I walked out of the house with my mother and walked out of the village. On the way past the neighbor's door, I saw women crying loudly, and a man's body crawling with locusts was lying in their house. My mother and I went to the city. 3 months later, my mother inexplicably complained of itchy hair and insisted on washing her hair every day. I knew it was the parasites in her body that had not been able to eat the water in the village for a long time and began to agitate. But why didn't I feel any discomfort? I suddenly remembered that when I left, the leech woman dripped her tongue blood on me. Was she helping? Thinking of this, I quickly dropped a drop of blood on my mother, and her discomfort symptoms disappeared as expected. More than 10 years later, my mother passed away due to illness. Before she died, she kept asking to be buried in the village, saying it was her hometown. I carried her ashes back to the village. The oldest man here was only 40 years old, and there were no old men, but there were elderly grandmothers. An old lady recognized me and told me what happened after I left. After I left, all the men in the village couldn't resist the temptation and tasted the taste of the beautiful grasshopper woman. Without exception, those men died. The locust woman only targets adult men, and after all the adult men in the village die, the leech woman told the only living person left in the village that the people in the village would bury her with water for generations to come, and he would come back 500 years later